This is the City of Frankfort Board of Commissioners work session. Today is July 10th, and it's 5 p.m. I'll ask our Madam Clerk to call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson.
Present.
Commissioner Unger.
Present.
Commissioner Waldridge.
Present.
Commissioner May.
Present.
Mayor Wilkerson.
And present. And we'll begin with ceremonial and recognition. If anyone has anything, Commissioner Waldridge.
I wanted to congratulate Fletcher Mazzarari for his gold medal in U.S. fencing. He was the national championship, and he is out of the Bluegrass Fencers Club. So I wanted to give him his props and just show that though we don't offer certain things in our community, our students are doing great things in other communities through other clubs and other communities, and that's why we have to really focus on bringing other items into our community so our children can have other items like fencing or different items that they could, just explore versus just basketball and baseball, and give them other things to do. So Fletcher is number one. He was a national championship, received that gold medal, and I'm super excited in U.S. fencing. So my second item I want to share, which I'm sure everyone will share something about, was just the amazing evening that our community came together for Noise for Jordan. I showed up a little late, but I was able to get about an hour and a half in when I came, and it was just, it seems from what I heard at the very beginning until where I was at the end, that it was an amazing celebration. It was an amazing event that our community came together and through, and it just really brings our focus on mental illness, and that people are going through things daily. People are hurting, our neighbors are hurting, our brothers and sisters are hurting, our children are hurting, and mental illness is a number one priority, I think, for a lot of us. I don't know how we heal it, but it brought to my attention the closeness that our community really truly has for support in our community. And it also brings up things that maybe us or other officials in the state can help with, allowing mental health to be number one priority, where people are not struggling to pay an electric bill versus going to a doctor to get help. And so I just say right now, in this struggle, that we reach out to people, tell them that we love them, let them know they're loved and that we appreciate them, and just reach out and talk to people and love our community. It was amazing. Everyone did great. Kelly, you did great playing. I know it was probably hard for you, as I'm sure you'll share. He was really close to you, but it was a really amazing time, and just to see our community come together, and it's just really hard that so many people are hurting and they're hiding behind a smile. So,
Thank you. Commissioner Unger.
I want to bring up a couple things as well. I want to thank any city staff member who responded to calls over the past couple weeks for storms, the rain. I mean, I personally saw the water on Broadway and saw the sewer department and streets down there working. So I had a call and an email that thanked city staff for all that work, and also to city staff that helped out over the weekend for events that were going on downtown. Thank you. I also wanted to announce, so the housing study that the city and the county jointly funded is complete, and I know I've had a few people ask me about that, and so we will have a scheduled community presentation made by the consultant, and that's going to take place July 19th at 5 p.m. at the River Room at Paul Sawyer Public Library. One other thing I wanted to mention, the Fuller Center for Housing. If you aren't aware of that group, look them up. On July 22nd, they're hosting volunteers who are biking across the country, and they're going to be working on 4 different projects here in Frankfort and Franklin County. One of them is going to be on Owington Avenue, and I know that they do need some help, and they possibly might need some help with some trash pickup. So it's just a few things I wanted to mention.
Thank you. Any others? If none, we'll move on. No citizens' comments tonight that I saw. And first we'll have staff report.
All right, first, the staff reports. We have Kathy Fields, HR Director, to discuss some suggested changes to the pay parental leave ordinance.
Good evening, everyone. I want to lead off and say that this new benefit has been very successful. We've had 11 employees already use the benefit, and it's just been really positively received, and it's been a great thing. Yeah, it's been very nice. However, with anything new, you often run into some hiccups and kind of look back and think, maybe there should have been some changes we made. So when we drafted this originally, it was aligned exactly with family medical leave, which requires a 1-year wait before you can receive a benefit. We then said, let's have it be for everybody. But in the aftermath of that, we've realized that we've had a few bumps where people used the benefit and then departed, and it left the city feeling kind of like they just gave away 6 weeks of pay that maybe didn't benefit anybody, well, didn't benefit the city. So one of the recommendations would be to change the policy to require an employee to be past their what we call trial period or probationary period to be eligible. And again, that's the same as federal family medical leave. The other change to this stipulates that if an employee leaves for a reason other than retirement, that if they have a balance of unused leave, that whatever they used in paid parental leave during the 12 months before would be deducted from any leave payout. Any questions about those changes?
Commissioner Unger.
I think it's a good idea. I knew it was something we probably talk about in the first year or so of doing this. So, but I am glad it's a benefit we have, and I think it's a good idea. So, thank you for bringing that back to us.
Seems like a reasonable tweak. We'll
Yep.
make
Thank
adjustments
you.
Yeah,
on the
sometimes
fly.
lessons learned looking backward, but
Yeah.
I want to emphasize this has been a huge positive.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, discussion items.
First on discussion items, we have a discussion of the new Fire Station 1. It's myself and Eric Chambers of Frankfort Girl. So Eric will do a quick presentation. He's been the only person that's been involved in this project since the start of it.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Again, my name is Eric Chambers, Vice President and Public Safety Architect for Branch Stitter Carroll. As Chief Monroe stated, I've been involved since 2017 on this project. Worked with, I'm going on my third commission and third chief, so been through a long process with y'all, and excited to be here tonight. So let me get started. Just kind of, I think you all have a copy of the presentation, but just some background. We were authorized to conduct, there was an RFP that was put out by the city for architect services for a new fire station, approximately 2.5 million, 8 to 10,000 square feet. The commission approved us being awarded that contract and requested at that time that we do a feasibility study both for City Hall and for the fire department to determine what was really needed for both facilities. So we conducted that feasibility study for both. We took an in-depth look at the fire department, both looking at the existing facility and then looking at potential sites throughout the city where the fire station might be located. And there was about, I think, 9 sites total that we looked at around the city. We did narrow it down at the time. The current site that has been acquired, the old pick-pack site, was off the table because it was not for sale. However, recently that property became available and the city purchased it. So we determined the fire station needs, looking at existing Station 1 for expansion, renovation. We determined very quickly that the current location is not feasible for any renovation expansion that would be a benefit to the city or for the fire department. We did concept plans for multiple facade studies in the site. We actually had an open house here back in November of last year, where I know some of you, I remember some of your faces were here for that. And we went through a variety of facade studies, talked about that, the building design, and some discussion that was had around that. During the study portion, we actually did a lot of citizen engagement and public input. This is just some example of some information that we provided in the study. But we had a large contingent of people that turned out not only for the survey portion, but also we conducted a multiple open house at the library. We had one here at a couple locations, and we had basically allowed the public to come in offer comments, offer their thoughts and suggestions. And so we did have a very good turnout for that. Some of the major items that we received from the public and staff input were the need for more apparatus bays, better accommodations for the firefighters, an updated facility, and better kitchen and meeting rooms. So this was a concept plan that we had done for the pick-pack site that we had actually done with Chief Briscoe after the pick-pack site was purchased. Through the discussion, the corner, we had some green space shown on the corner there where it says tenant building, and it was discussed that that was not something that was desired at there. So we looked at a few options of expanding the building out and accommodating some more meeting space. We also looked at a concept of putting another building on that site for a potential tenant. But the size of the property to put the fire station there and another tenant building is just not feasible. It's just not big enough to be able to handle that and the space needs that the fire department needs specifically for their apparatus. So this was the floor plan that we developed working with the fire department on their needs for the fire station, both current needs and future needs. So we looked at the potential of growth in the community, where the growth for the fire department was going, and things that they would need to provide. At one time, we actually had a third story that was added to this, looking at their training facility being added to this project, actually as a third story where they would have all of the classrooms that are down at the other building provided here. It was commissioned at that time, made a decision, let's take the third floor off, let's just stick to the two-story concept, which is what you see here. So we have a lot of space here. There is some training space, meeting space, but then the living areas and the support space for the fire department primarily is the majority of what we see here. So these were just some concept studies. Some of you probably remember these if you were at the open house that we had. We had multiple concept elevations that were kind of shown of what the building might look like with some just different options, some ideas of how the windows and the doors might be treated. And so really the design process is not completed. It's not, if you decide to move forward, it's not like we're going to start construction tomorrow. There's still a lot of design that still has to happen. Obviously you all would have input with respect to that, because obviously the look of the building and those types of things would still have to be decided upon. Some of the cost comparisons, I know there's been some discussion about that. In 2018, when we began looking at this project specifically, Fire Station 2, we basically had started out with about an 18,000 square foot program. Once we started laying out the floor plans and things, it grew to about 21,500 in 2018. Obviously that was pre-pandemic, issues that we've seen in the market over the last 3 years. That was a $7.5 million project cost, construction being about 5.76 of that total number. In the 2023, just some updated numbers that we provided. The two-story concept that I just showed was basically right under 23,000 square feet. And that was, again, the reason it grew was because it was requested that we expand out that corner and remove some of the green space that was there, picking up some additional meeting space. So that, based on current market conditions, that project budget, total project cost is $12,472,660, with about 10.4 of that being the construction cost of the project. So we're working on me personally and our firm, we're working on about 6 fire stations that have bid or are in design at this time. And these numbers are pretty accurate to what we're seeing in the market and what we bid recently for some projects. So we feel comfortable that these numbers are pretty accurate with respect to construction costs. Obviously, a lot of the soft costs and fees and contingencies and things are estimates that we provide just to make sure you guys are accommodating not just the construction costs. So those numbers can fluctuate respectively. just as an outlook to kind of give you some understanding where we are, the proposed schedule. Of course, these dates are a little since we pushed the meeting back, but if we were to be given approval to move forward, we still have to work on design, again, as I mentioned. So that we're still in early design phase, design development. So there's still a lot of work that has to be done. So that's basically about 3 months of time that we'll have to do that. And then we have to prepare construction documents to be able to take that to the contractors to bid the project. Permitting and bidding would take about a month and a half to get that process through. And then construction starting probably, again, if we move forward, given approval within the next few weeks, we would be looking at probably a late spring at this point, construction breaking ground. And in a project of this size, you're probably looking at 14-month construction time frame for a fire station of this size. So I'll stop there and open it up for any questions, comments. Chief, I didn't miss anything you wanted to cover? Okay.
May I ask one? Commissioner Thompson, do you have any questions?
Hi, I don't know that we formally met. I'm Kyle Thompson. Earlier this year, and I think one of the reasons that you're here is because I had raised some concerns, some of which have borne themselves out just in your presentation. I understand that in 21 and 22 there were discussions of the changes, the immediate changes from a $2.75 million project to something greater than that, and at the time it was about a $10 million project, and now we're looking at about a $12 million project, it looks like. I guess my initial question is, seeing as how this is a 18-month process, even from the time that we start right now, it is very unlikely that we would even stay in that $12.5 million range when it comes to the actual cost, even soft costs, I would assume, because not the price of things is just going up exponentially. So I'm wondering when we discussed way back when, maybe back as far back as 2016 and 2017, when we discussed the needs being an 8,000 to 10,000 square foot, $2.5 million project, and that grew from a 7,000 to a $23,000, 23,000 square foot area, was beyond the feasibility study. I do see in the discussion points here, you say the current scope and cost of the project is $10 million, at least the letter that was provided to us from, it says July 7th, but it's essentially the same letter that was provided in April from, at the time, City Manager Hay. My question is, at what point did Branstetter Carroll, and you point to section 11.1 of your contract, believe that the city had approved an increase to a $10 million project? Is Branstetter Carroll under the impression that we had agreed that we were going to move to a $10 million project at that time?
So the RFP that was issued stated at 8 to 10,000, 2.5 million. That was what was in the RFP for scoping for us.
That's correct.
The commission at that time asked us to do the feasibility study.
Correct.
Which through that process we generated it to it went up to an 18,000 with that, discussing with the fire station what they needed, the growth in the city, those things. And then we provided the cost. The feasibility study at that point in 2018. So we presented to the commission, and then it began to, the request was for us to begin concept design work with Chief Briscoe and his staff to come up with floor plan concepts and that. So we had started that process. The pick-pack site had not been purchased at that time.
Understood.
So then once pick-pack site was purchased, the streetscape was going on. We started working on the concept design, what does the building look like, all of those things. As far as, I don't know if the commission ever approved. I mean, it's we've just been moved under the assumption it's a 22,000 square foot to look at the concepts to help make decisions. So I think that's why we're here, is to make it, the commission to make a determination, are we moving forward with this project, or what are we doing? So,
I guess my question is, in the original RFP, and you may not know, and maybe Chief knows, were we, I mean, we're talking about something that's 3 times as large as the original RFP required. It seems way outside the scope of the original RFP, just from a dollars and cents standpoint, but also a square footage and needs-based standpoint. What I want to make sure I understand is, when I looked at the initial report, when you all did the initial study for this project, the number 1 goal was to decrease the 4 and the 8-minute runtime. That's what I saw in every single RFP, and also in the study that you all conducted. That wherever we chose, it had to decrease the 4-minute to 8-minute runtime. If we have increased the budget of this 3 times what it was supposed to be, and the size, 5 times what it was supposed to be, and now we're looking at a project square footage wise that's at least 3 times as big as we had initially estimated, does that project actually reduce the 4 and the 8-minute runtime, which was the number 1 specific need to increase what we had with Station 1?
okay, I mean,
The run times will be similar, keeping, I think the feasibility study really specified, and I don't have it in front of me, that Second Street corridor is where we needed to be to keep our run time sufficient. This is, on a first alarm, Station 1 is second due on every fire in the city, and keeping that, right now we have that, 3 to 5 minute is where we want to be at.
Right.
And right now, we are at that in the current station. We have met that. But moving off that Second Street corridor is where we're going to really struggle on keeping those run times. So that is why Second Street was always the fallback to where we wanted to go. Pick-Pack was not available at the time. I think where the project really grew, and what you're referring to, Chief Briscoe was a very forward-thinking chief and was looking at growth. We all knew that, and I think he was planning on, with parcels B and C growing like that, we're going to need to. We've already outgrown this station. There's 5 apparatus in a 2-bay station.
Oh no, I
know you all are in agreement on that.
Right.
So I think with the Pick-Pack site coming forward, that Branstad and Carroll was just doing what they were asked to do by the fire chief, to get us a station that was going to be ready for growth and we'll be able to be in for the next 50, 60 years and grow into. And to be honest, right now we would fill that station up with where we are right now. And with the projected growth of the city, it's very needed to have a station of that size, which, like Eric had said, you all still get to decide a little bit on that size and things like that. That's not finalized. The biggest thing we need that in the memo that I wrote was just we need to agree to the contract amendment so we can start that phase, start those processes, get the design going. We do need that size of a station. You can tweak it a little bit, but that is very needed with the training, with the location, with the apparatus, and with the quarters for the personnel is very needed.
I've got more, but I'll wait.
Anyone else? Well, I do have a question on the, so there was a vote by the BOC at some point, before our time. That's been why we don't remember the approval of this going from 8 to 10,000 square feet to 21 to 22,000. So that's where, and I'm sure that's somewhere in the minutes, but is there, I guess we will have an opportunity at some point we will have other options besides 21 or 22,000. You will show us other scenarios where, I know Chief just said that we'll already fill this up, but is there any other, something else for us to consider besides the 22 or 22,000 square feet? That's what I want to know, is that if we approve this in July to move forward at the voting session, we will have an opportunity to adjust the size of this if we see it, unless we're convinced by Chief that we really need this.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 ways to approach a project. And one of the ways is the way that it's been conducted at this point, is you do a study, determine how big do we need it, how much is it gonna cost, and then you move forward with, based off that. The other way is just, you say, you may not be able as a commission to say, we need this many square feet, but you could say, we want to, the budget has to stay at this number, whatever that number is, 10 million, 9 million, 11 million, whatever you set it at. And then the chief and I would have to go through the design process to get it to where we believe that we can get that square footage down to that amount to hit that budget number, whatever that number ends up being. And so, yes, there's opportunity that we can go and trim, some of the square footage back out. I mean, we were down at one time to a 20,000 square foot before we added some additional space at the front to eat up that green space. So there's room that we could cut some of that. I would say the areas that we don't want to cut are the areas that affect the operations of the fire department.
Of course.
And just from my experience, this size of a station, basically, I'm going to consider this your headquarters station. Most of the headquarters stations that we're doing for communities of your size are in that 18 to 24,000 square foot size, because you're accommodating office, admin, you're accommodating some training space, bays, obviously, support, living space for the firefighters. So you're not out of the realm of the square footage. The main reason, besides the growth in the square footage, that the project has grown in cost is you went from 2017 to 2023, and we had a pandemic and escalations across, everything, and so that's really hit too, with respect to the budget.
And one more question for me, and that's it. So can you speak to in the schematics there was the plaza, the blank, the green space. Why do we need that? All right. Now my biggest hesitation here is we have a brand new. We did so much work on this street, 2nd Street, and we're working on the streetscape, and then we're going to put more empty space there. I'd like to see the buildings come to the corner, and that's partly what the tenant. We ask about the tenant space. Why can't we need activity on this street? Mm-hmm. Now we're going to have another government building that's non-tax paying. So what can we do with that empty space there, or is it required for safety?
That corner space there, no, it's not required for safety, unless the chief differs with me. I mean, the majority of the concern would be where the apparatus are coming in and out of the station, which is further down the block, so to speak. Yeah, I mean, typically government buildings have some type of plaza space in front of them just to as a gesture to the public, but if that's not a desire for the community, then that can be,
We'll have that opportunity in some
yeah,
future meeting to discuss this.
Yeah. These were the elevations we showed before. Hold on, let me go back. Before this site plan was generated, where we actually came further over to the corner. So we as far as the apparatus bays are concerned, we're really, those kind of are set because of the distance that the vehicles need coming in and out for turning radiuses and space. But as far as the building itself, I mean, we can move it, longitudinally across the site in order to adjust for that.
Any other? Commissioner Thompson, did you have another?
Yes, I do. Just to clear up the record, on December of 21, on my own motion, we approved the further design of the schematics that would take the whole project to $100,000, and then we were told at that time, in fact it said staff recommends, and I'm reading from the 12/20/21 minutes, that the staff recommends that we approve the expense of $100,000 to bring Fire Station 1 to a shovel-ready project by July 2022. In April 25th, 2022, reading from those minutes, I was not on the commission at that time, and it was approved 5-0 to accept the design change from 3 stories to 2 stories. So somewhere between the December 20th, 2021 meeting and the April 2022 meeting, the shovel-ready discussion of July 2022 kind of came off the table, even though in December it was said that we were going to have the design for those a 3-story and a 2-story. April they chose the 2-story. So at some point after that, we then find out the cost of this, and my concern is that this reminds me scarily so much of the 2003 to 2007 discussions of the building across the street that we have where the police station is, that went from a $3 to $4 million project to above $16 million project. And even in October of 21, post-pandemic, we were told that the 3-story design would reach 9.7 million. Now we're at 12.5 million, and I fully anticipate this will be a $20 million project by the time it's over. And that's no knock against you. That's just the reality of the world we're living in. And my question is this: at some point, there was a decision to move forward not only with the design of these plans, but the city actually allocated $100,000 for those designs back in December of 21, correct?
I can't speak to that.
Okay.
I was not privy to that.
That is, yes.
Okay.
That was Chief Briscoe who wrote the memo you're referring to.
Yes.
That money was put into an account, I believe, used for renderings, one of the other ground studies over at Pigback that was done.
Geotech and survey.
The geotech and survey that was done over there. And that is, I know you brought up the shovel-ready thing. I do not know where the shovel-ready came from. This does, I know what memo it came from, but I don't know why it was said.
Right.
But what this is doing is moving that forward, because their next step in this process is us signing that contract amendment. That is the next step, correct? Do we say that's
our current contract that we have currently that we've been billing under is for the original project at 2.5 million. So we have not received a contract amendment increasing our fee to a current project cost.
This memo says that you all have received $111,125.
That's probably correct. Our original contract's 182.5, I think.
So when we authorized $100,000 in December of 21, we had only paid $11,000 so far.
11,000?
Yeah, because it says here it was increased to 111,125, or that's the total amount that you all have been paid up to this point. Is that correct?
I believe it's more than that, and we've had I think some of the issues with the money is every time we go through this, there's other things that are added to it, and that's eating into the money. So that 100,000 goes to the geotech, goes to this, something else
Sure.
that was added.
I understand.
I can get you those exact numbers, but it's more than 111,000 that we paid already.
Okay, so that's the question, because
Yeah,
under
I
the
will get you those
discussion
numbers
item
tomorrow
it
morning.
says that. Madam City Solicitor, what is the rule or law related to increase in scope of an RFP, wherein we have to either publish it or ask for other offerings?
That is something that completely depends on the particular RFP. Usually, if it's a bid, then we would have a situation where if it's going outside of the original scope, the question to always ask is, would that have changed the initial bids or who bid on it to the extent that it should be rebid? With an RFP, it's a little bit different because we aren't utilizing the same procurement process. But That being said, I would need to look at the actual language of the RFP to see, I mean, this does happen where projects, of course, are not what they initially anticipated the cost to be. I don't know that we would necessarily need to redo the RFP and start over, but there would reach a certain point where you wonder if that would be beneficial.
Right.
Correct.
I don't know that the legality is that much of a concern. It's more the practicality once you get so far from the initial scope.
I'm genuinely concerned, Mayor and Madam Solicitor, that we are, and let me say, we need a new fire station. I don't deny that at all. But I know that there's been a change in the potential decisions of what we do with the entirety of this building and the property that it sits on and things of that nature. And there's been some changes in the downtown streetscapes and availability of property. And knowing that the original RFP discussed those 4 and 8 minute run times, I think it's vital to us to really take a hard look at this, because it was an albatross for a long time in the building across the street, and it's the one thing that everyone discussed. And I don't want to get into a similar situation that is unfair. That was unfair to the police department and the emergency management. This would be unfair to the fire department to have that hung on them. That it's not a matter of whether we need it. We need it. What we want to be is transparent from the beginning, and not have something balloon from $3 million to 18, 20, something crazy $1 million. And I understand times have changed. It's been 20 years since that incident, but that was fodder for the State Journal and other folks for a long time. So I just want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence here.
I will say that in that original contract with Branch Carroll, it did say if anything exceeded 2.5 or 2.75, that we'd have to do a contract amendment.
Yes.
So that was in there originally.
And is that the purpose of this particular memo, to sign that
It is
amendment?
to proceed on with them continuing on with the project is where we're at with that. We're at a stalemate until we sign that contract amendment, or if you're saying rebid it or whatever we need to do. The caution I would say with rebidding it is they are giving us quite a big discount. It's a 5% fee is all they're charging for us, which is down from the original 7.5, I believe it was.
7.25.
7.25 was the original fee off the original contract, and they've reduced this, and we're only having to pay the difference to them, so that it's a cost savings to stay with them if it is what we're allowed to do.
Good
In our
information.
contract, in the contract, it states that each phase has to be approved to move forward. So we can't officially move forward with design development till the commission says we're in agreement with what you presented in SD, let's move forward.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, I think we're asking for permission to move
Permission to
forward,
move
but
forward.
also for our contract amendment, since the project has obviously grown.
Okay. Something we may take up in the July voting session. So we have a lot to think about. And just one more question. So we do vote to move forward. At what point will we have decision making on how much the project will cost? And when are we going to say this is how much we're willing to spend on this?
You could make it as part of your motion based on the numbers we've given you, or we can come back at, in the design development phase, and before we proceed to construction documents, and have commission approve the budget at that time.
Okay.
So you can do it either way. So
Okay. Thank you so much. I think you've asked a lot of good questions. So appreciate your time.
thank you.
Thank you.
And next on the discussion item, don't you want to stay down there?
You got it?
Well, I'll announce this one. Police, fire, public works, finance, sewer pay discussion. Kathy Fields, Dusty Bowman, and Jason Monroe, fire chief, police chief, and HR director.
Just one page. But you got what
Hi.
Hi. I want to start off by just kind of swinging back to something that we talked about in May. So I had shown some slides at that time that I talked about some departments that were experiencing difficulty with recruitment and difficulty with retention. And we also talked about how JER Group, our consultant, a year ago that did a wage and compensation study for us, advised that we really focus on the early years of hire. So 1 year later, we're still seeing that to be necessary. In solid waste, we have a 33% turnover in the early years of hire. Streets, police, sewer, and fire. All 5 of those departments were experiencing anyway over 10% turnover. Anything below 10 is generally kind of accepted, known to occur. So those are the target departments where we're trying to stop the higher turnover and trying to get those employees to stay. In order to do that, we're proposing additional pay increases to be issued in August to employees in those groups that were experiencing the high turnover. We're trying to use the funds that the city has toward the areas where it appears to be most needed to stabilize those areas. Some of the ways that we're looking to try to mitigate the overall cost are that Fire's been very strategic in looking at their overtime management and have saved in the neighborhood of $200,000 in overtime reduction, so it's a very significant amount. We also are looking at some restructuring efforts in departments. Police, sewer, and planning have all done some restructuring that brings some savings to the city to help offset costs. And we're looking at pushing reclassification increases to the start of when we pay employees. So I'll give you an example of how that works. When employees get hired, we currently will give an employee a 5% increase after 1 year of hire, or a 5% increase after 3 years of hire. Then we give them another 3% increase at maybe year 6 or year 5. So in fire and police, we have a total of another 8% of increases that we issue in those first few years of hire. Those are the years that we see the high turnover occur. We just looked at it again this morning with our police chief and fire chief, ran another report looking 12 years back and still, or not 12 years, 12 months, and continue to see that the turnover is occurring with those employees with shorter tenure. If we take the pay increases that we are already issuing, the 5% that we issue or the 3% that we issue, and instead of people making our employees wait for 1 or 2 or 3 years to get that, if we just give that to them on the front end, we're increasing the pay, we're making the positions more desirable and more competitive, but we're also paying money that we were already committed to paying eventually anyway. Any questions about that strategy? So those are a couple of the concepts that we're proposing as a way to try to manage the cost. Restructuring, where we're changing some headcount, working with the reclassification structure, and then overtime reduction. In terms of the costs that we're looking at, we've been working with the divisions that I've mentioned, sewer, public works, fire, and police. And we've got spreadsheets developed, but they're not yet fully complete. So what we would like to propose to the board is that we have those spreadsheets at a place where we could say that August increases would not exceed $800,000 in total for those departments. Often those play around another 7% increase, but as I mentioned, we're already giving 8% in fire and 8% in police. So we're trying to use costs that the city was spending. Any questions with regard to the not to exceed 800,000 for all of, I know it's a big amount. Yes.
I think that's a great idea. I was a little worried looking at some of the spreadsheets that the police options, sort of what the ask was from the department and what staff had recommended was a little far apart. So I was hoping we could come together a little bit more. And it sounds like that's what we're working on. So I'm very happy with that. I also would like to make sure that some of those entry-level jobs, especially in waste management, are getting the hourly pay they need. It sounds like we're around over $20 now.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Okay.
I forgot to mention that. The target was to get them at or above $40,000 a year and in that $20 mark. So I am very pleased to report that we are fully staffed in solid waste, but should we need to post for that position, we will be posting at $20.53.
There you go.
So,
That's good.
Now, okay, so that then begs the question then that it looks like with the salary adjustments, everybody's already at that number, right? So whatever we would bring a new person in at, we already have everybody in the solid waste department at that number or above, correct?
Yes, and that's the reason that we're looking for these August increases, because we don't want to post for these positions and have existing staff under that pay. So part of the August initiative would be to get any existing employees actually above that entry-level amount that a new person would be coming in at.
And the $800,000, that number, was there a limit that you all put on that said you just decided not to go above 800,000, or how did you come up with that number?
Actually, 800,000 wasn't the number. How we arrived at that was I'll say like with Public Works and Sewer, we kind of started out with another 7%. We had the $20 an hour or greater. We wanted to hit that. We wanted to hit 40,000 a year or greater. And so we ended up with like on the entry level earner around 7%. And then we kind of stacked that upward, going 7%, 5%, 3%. It got lower as we went upward. So that wasn't really designed around, we got to stay under a number. It was, if we try to get our incoming earners and those existing employees, how high do we need to stack that? So that's where that number ended up with. We did a similar thing with sewer. So really, the number was arrived at by just trying to figure out where do we need to get that starting pay, and then as we try to move pay upwards so that we don't have incoming people overlapping people above them. Spreadsheets were developed, and we just added up the numbers, and it landed just below. It didn't actually hit 800, but it was a little bit below 800,000. So I don't know if there's anything that you would like to add to that.
No, I think that you know it.
I think it would be helpful for us to know, and Dusty has, I think, more. Do you want to drill in deeper with some of your details? Or?
Sure, yeah, man. You know, for us, the way we really target it in is how we can make that bottom tier look more enticing. Because there's a couple other things, a couple other strategies at play that we'll be presenting later. But this was most important because right now I've got, here in, I guess, 21 days, I'm sitting 12 bodies short, and then five more that can't account for the street because they're in academy. So any much more bleeding, and I don't know that we have a Band-Aid big enough to really put on it. So the goal with some of my numbers was to hit that lower 5 and below, but also with some of the aggressive behaviors and changes that some other agencies are making. You look at Oldham County, LaGrange, Simpsonville, Shelbyville, all these that are trying to compete against each other are raising theirs above where we're at. So the goal is to make our numbers for the 5 to 10 year, which is now where I'm starting to have some people start to get curious and get feelers out, to make it close that gap of, I mean, we're not ever going to pay what Oldham County can. I mean, one of our officers leaving here next week, he's going for about a $20,000 to $24,000 a year pay raise. He'll be making more in his overtime than what our sergeants and lieutenants do. So are we going to meet that? No, that's not what these numbers are trying to do. But if I can close a gap and make it less attractive to leave, that's what I'd like to do.
Commissioner Lott, did you want to say something?
Oh, I just wanted to say that I'm pleased that we've added the Public Works and Sewer. I know that you and I have had many talks over the past few years of getting them into this conversation, looking at them as hazardous, even though they're not listed as that, and working with our sewage and our trash. So I'm super excited that we've been able to add them into this conversation to be able to look at their numbers and going up. So that pleases me because we need people in those areas too, and they deserve it because it is hazardous, and we need to look at it as such, even if it isn't hazardous by KRS or whatever. It is in our area, and we need to see as such. But I'm pleased about that. Yeah. Yes. So I'm pleased about that. I'm all for wanting to be competitive across the board. I know Dusty and I have had many conversations on these numbers, different visions that he's had to try to I guess, manipulate the numbers so they do work for us. And it is hard, like you said, we're not going to be able to compete with the Odom counties right now, and people like that. But we have to make sure that we're making the right decisions for increase, but we're also making the right decision that we don't put ourselves in a hole, that our salaries are becoming overbearsome and continuing to hire. So I really like the fact that we're looking at our positions, and looking at restructuring. So I appreciate the staff that has been trying to restructure rather than continuing to sort of be staff heavy. That has really helped and allowed us to move these numbers in the right direction for staff to get increases. And so I want to make sure that people that work for the city are making a livable and a viable wage, and keeping the city moving in the right direction.
Commissioner May.
Maybe a question for both, but when we look at other communities and we're comparing the numbers, are we also factoring in benefits and total packages of what the city is offering compared to?
We mostly we're looking at pay, but we're aware of some of those benefits. And since you opened that question, one of the things that might be something the board would opt to do, because some employers are coming up pretty strong with fully paid medical for their lowest tier option. So for us, our lowest tier option is about $41 a month. And if that's something that the board deems would help us with recruitment, it could be a good move in terms of the cost that the city would receive. $40 a month isn't that huge, but it's kind of good to be able to market or promote ourselves. So we are aware that, especially with police, with public safety, that's one of the newer, I would say, kind of like trends, is to offer the no cost on medical. But I do think it's often for not every medical plan, but usually their lower cost medical plan, and then if you want to add on cost to get a higher one, you can do so. So yeah, we're looking at that. And we have some unique benefits that we offer as well that I think have been attractive to employees. With the retirement savings, others can jump in with what they think, but I feel like we're leading the way with a 24% contribution in your first year toward your retirement. Nobody else is touching that.
Commissioner Thompson, do you have a question?
Does this take into account any of these incredibly massive signing bonuses that some of these departments are providing? I know I heard just this week that one of the departments was offering like $7,500 or a $10,000 signing bonus or something. Does this take that into account in a situation like that?
We think it is a very viable concept, which may be presented in soon to be.
Understood.
But this is for existing employees, not prospective employees.
Understood.
So
Understood.
yeah. I want to kind of swing back to an earlier question about how we came up with this number. We do look to keep things fairly comparable in public safety and fairly comparable between public works and sewer. So when we look at total payroll costs and the percentage that the city's allocating to the department, we're kind of trying to keep the percentage of funds relative to the size of the department kind of level between police and fire, between public works and sewer, just to keep everybody happy campers.
So this is something that we'll work on and something we can vote on in July, be a voting meeting?
Yeah, I would ask if there is any feedback we can receive from the board. We have said that a not to exceed 800,000, and we're probably right in that zone. So we would be very close to having these spreadsheets finished, if that's acceptable to the board. If it's not, and we need to dial in, it would be helpful in the interest of time to start understanding that. We do hope to issue, with board approval, these pay increases August 4th. So if this proposal is acceptable to the board, we're getting really close, maybe still some work with police, but if not, then I guess I would really like to know where the board would like to see that number reined into, so that we can continue our work in terms of achieving that number.
I don't know if we're ready to say it tonight. I think that's something I'll have to talk over with the city manager and the department, police chief, fire chief. Public Works.
Okay,
Does anyone else have a comment on that?
I think we're on the right track here. I think we all agree that this needs to happen. One of the great fears of I think your guys and gals and Public Works is that we said, let us get through the budget process and then we promise we'll revisit this. And I think in years past, decades past, they've heard that before and we haven't revisited. So I think as a good faith effort, we need to just make sure that if we can get it on August 4th, that we do our very best to make that happen, because we've had some people that are hanging on just to see what happens, and I don't want them to be hanging on any more than they have to. But I'll say what Commissioner Waldridge said as well. Very happy that Public Works is involved in this. I think that makes a big difference in the morale of our city employees.
thanks. Thanks for recognizing
you.
the importance of this.
Good work.
Next, we have FEMA Riverview Park Project, Katie Beard.
Good evening. We talked about this a little bit last month, and I just wanted to follow up with some more information, some more detailed information for you, and some examples of what this might look like, and talk a little bit more about how we can get this important project to move forward. As you all know, the bank has sloughed off in numerous events with the river coming up and down so quickly and pulling all that soil out with it. So we have some FEMA funding to help address this problem. We do have some additional funding that will be required. Scott Ahrens with Hazen and Sawyer is here with me tonight to help answer some of the questions about the design and the stability of this bank, and as well as Sean Pickens in Parks, and Penny, of course, who has a handle on the big picture master plan projects for this area. So like we've talked about, the main idea is to get a permanent fix in place as soon as possible so that we can continue to use the park for all of its purposes. And I think Hazen and Sawyer has developed just that. I know we had a late email go out today that I don't know if you've had a chance to look at yet, but this should stay in place 50 years or so is our estimate at this time. So as you can see in this cross section that's up on the screen, we'll start out with those Ajax at the bottom to provide stability there. And then we'll have a flat bench about 10 foot wide, and that'll be with riprap. We'll fill in some of the gaps, some of the voids in that riprap with some soil or some smaller grade aggregate so that that is able to be accessed easier for recreation as well as maintenance in the future. And then you can see another section there on the bank of Ajax and another section of riprap up towards the top of the bank. This is the option that has been developed, and we've got a 90% set of drawings ready for this option. And this is what our cost estimate has been based off of at this point. If we go to the next slide, there is an option if you just feel like you don't like the look really of the Ajax. You can opt to use riprap. It would have to be laid at a flatter slope. That would possibly increase the excavation costs a little bit. So again, the cost estimate is based on this first section and not on this one, but we just wanted to put that out there as an option. Again, we talked a little bit last time about vegetation. All of these hard armoring solutions can be treated with plants, grasses, shrubs, trees, so that we have a nice green look there. And so over time, as all of that grows and develops, it'll provide a stable and healthy riverbank. And will look nice as well. A couple examples of what it looks like when it's first installed. This one shows kind of the Ajax near the water level with the riprap behind it. This is an example here in Frankfort that was actually installed in early 2000s. And it is behind the Sullivan Garage off of Buffalo Alley. If you look from the Singing Bridge in that direction, the bank is stabilized, but there's a lot of vegetation and you really can't see the Ajax anymore. But there's a couple pictures of when those were installed. And then this is just a rough rendering of what it could look like at Riverview Park. You can see the dock in the background of this picture. And that's, you know, once it's installed, that's kind of the look that you would have initially. Again, the green would grow in at a later time. But I think that is the gist of the project. I know you might have a lot of questions, so I'm just going to open it up for questions, and hopefully Scott or I or Sean or one of us can help answer those.
I see the cost estimate on here from 2003. Do we know the cost estimate of what's needed? And I know that it's not just needed in Riverview, but probably quite a bit larger. Has there been a cost study on that yet?
The cost at Riverview Park is estimated, there's a range. The engineer's estimate is about 1.7 million. Again, we have about 300,000 committed in FEMA funds and a $30,000 city match that was approved back in May or June. But so you can see there's a pretty big gap there that we still need to cover, up to 1.4 million. I think we can do some of the work in-house, possibly some of the paving or concrete work, or some of the planting possibly in-house, and reduce that cost some. But that's what we're looking at, is about 1.4 million that we need to find funding for. I think Rebecca Hall, I don't know if she's available virtually or not, if you have questions about funding. She has talked to Andy Seth about some funding opportunities in the future. I am not sure about this phase of the bank stabilization, because additional funding will take time to, but Rebecca may want to speak to that if you'd like.
We can't hear
We
you,
can see
Rebecca.
you, but we can't hear you.
There it goes.
Not yet. Can you hear us? It's a good camera. Like that.
Oh. Is the volume turned? Oh.
There she is.
Not working.
No.
No, sorry.
It's the volume on TV.
Well, thank
We can see you. Thanks for trying.
She's right in the paper.
So there could be other funding.
Yeah, so my understanding is there could be other funding for other areas of the riverbank that will require stabilization in the future. A couple of issues, the timing, it will take time to apply for and receive those funds, and we want to go ahead and get this project moving. And then another factor is you can't match federal funds with federal funds, so that may not be an option for this particular phase of the project.
Questions? So, well, Rebecca, we can't hear her, but maybe I can ask you. So, by accepting the 300,000, did we? If we can't match, we can't ask for more federal funds on this project or the rest of the riverfront.
That's my understanding. If we accept the 300,000, we need to do the part that was approved by FEMA, and Scott may speak more to that. He's had these conversations with FEMA. And another question that came up was, could we phase it? And it's just a matter of what does the river do in the meantime. We want a permanent stabilization solution that we know is gonna hold. So you could attempt to phase it and just put in the Ajax at the bottom level and you know, just grass or something on the bank above that. But I think that's kind of taking a risk of losing it and possibly losing the Ajax that you just installed. So I think the recommendation would be we really need to do it all at once.
Any other discussion, or Commissioner Thompson?
Can you tell us the length of the bank that we're talking about for this
Yeah, Scott, can you?
remediation?
Hi, I'm Scott Ahrens. I'm with Hazen and Sawyer. The actual length of the protected area, I believe it to be roughly about 600 feet, is my recollection.
And do you know the boundary points? Like is there something that we can rely on from a
Yes, we have
waypoint?
an overhead.
Right. If
How much of Riverview Park?
Yeah, how much of Riverview Park is that? Like where does it start? Where would that end?
Well, I can give you general landmarks unless we pull up the drawings that show that. But there is a sunken barge at the east end of Riverview Park, and that is, you know, one endpoint where that sunken barge is. And at the other endpoint, it's probably within about 100 feet of the bridge.
Okay.
So it's pretty much that entire riverbank right there.
That helps out greatly. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And with those benches, can you walk on those? Can you go down there? Is it usable? Is it going to be?
Yeah, so that's one of the advantages of this, and one of the things we tried to focus on was creating better public access to the water. And so the access to those benches will be the current concrete sidewalk that takes you down to the boat dock. You'll be able to access the benches from there and walk either direction along there. And then I think, this kind of ties in with the overall master plan as well, because, these could be used for, the connectivity of other trails and hiking paths and things like that. One of the things that this does is it essentially creates a good base. And whether you have an aggregate path on that bench or you fill it with soil and try to seed it, there's also the opportunity that you have the flexibility that someday in the future you might want to go ahead and pave it, and you could pave that area, maybe even make it ADA compliant aside from the egress, which could be a bit challenging just because of slopes. But there's the opportunity to tie that in with the master plan so you have connectivity throughout the city.
Just to follow up, Sean was texting with Rebecca. She confirmed you cannot match or use any additional federal funds on this project with the FEMA money.
Okay, we'll have to explore that.
So why would the FEMA money only be 300,000, being that it is flood and we have a really bad curve there going around our area? And why is there not more money in FEMA to be able to reach up, being that our project is 1.4?
So the key reason for that is that the funds that are being awarded by FEMA are public disaster assistance funds, and they're based on the damages that occurred, not on the cost to restore. And so FEMA looked at what was lost and as far as riverbank, what the value of that is, and also riprap that had been there previously. And so they looked at the dollar value of the losses, and that's what they're able to give money for. And unfortunately, in order to stabilize this and make it a permanent solution, it requires something more extensive than what FEMA has allocated funding for.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think that's a good start.
Thank you.
When does the
Thank you.
FEMA money kick in, and when do we have to know that we want to kick in the rest of the 1.4 million, and how we're going to do that in order to be able to use the FEMA money? And is there a date that we need to use the FEMA money by?
Yes, we have agreed to use the FEMA money.
Mhm.
We approved that, I think, at the board meeting back in May.
Mhm.
So we have committed to use that money. The time frame, we have an extension to construct, install this stabilization by December of 2024.
Okay.
So we do have some time, but we would like to actually start much sooner than that, once we get through the permitting, all of the permitting that's required, and get through the season where the docks are being used heavily. So end of October, early November, we'd love to start construction this year. As far as when do we need to commit the 1.4, I think it would just be as soon as possible. I would bring a proposal back to you to vote on at the voting meeting, I believe, to ask you to consider that then in 2 weeks. Not to say that if it's delayed, it's gonna kill the project, but that's what I would propose to do at this point.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Now move on to action items.
The approval of the city manager job description.
So do we need to discuss this?
I think it should go in for discussion.
Or,
I'll make a motion that we move it for discussion.
well, we can just make a motion to approve it, can't we, and then we'll discuss it.
Then what are you discussing if you approve it? Is that what you're?
We're voting to approve the city manager job description.
I'll make a motion.
Motion to approve the city manager job description.
Is that what the motion's for?
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I will withdraw my motion. I guess we won't wait for a second on
No,
that.
I guess we can,
Okay.
more than a second.
Oh, second. Whatever I need to do.
Do we have a second on this?
Second.
Okay. Motion to approve city manager job description. And then we have a second. Now open it up for discussion. And I have a question. Well, is the job description gonna be what was revised in June 11 of 2018, or what was in the job posting that we most recently did for the last hire? Because they're different.
If the board approves the copy of the job description that they received, then I would interpret that the job description's approved as is. If the board wants the job description to be revised, like posting or somehow different, then just direct me.
Yeah, but we received both.
Hmm?
We received both.
Yeah, so this first one would be the job description, the second one would be the job posting.
Posting.
Yeah.
So I shared with the board what went out when we were seeking a city manager, but this would be the document that currently is on file as a job description. It's very easy to change it if it needs to be changed.
I just wanted to make sure that we were very clear that when we're posting that our city is in a situation where those duties could change a bit, as hiring them, that within a year, that person may not be city manager, but where we let that person land and what duties they get to hold if we do change our form of government. And so that, I think that some kind of phrase, whether that's in the job description itself or that's in the job posting itself, there needs to be some kind of phrase that is letting them know what kind of job that they're applying for. I guess I was wanting a little bit more discussion in these job positions, because I know there are board members who have sort of wavered whether or not we want to do assistant city manager or not in moving forward. And I feel like this is our time on the table to decide on, do we want to move forward with that? How do we do that? if we're gonna change our government, but we cannot continue where we're at right now. Our city needs, a leader, and one that is knowledgeable of all of these projects that we have going on, because we have a lot of projects going on, engineering mindset, and being able to understand where we've come from and where we're going. So that's why I'm really pushing that we do need someone in this meantime to focus on this, but I also need that person to know that they're not coming in just to be let go within a year, because of maybe we could be restructuring. Don't know yet, that's up to our community, but
I think that's utterly reasonable.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
The job description would probably still say other duties as described, but I think a potential transition should be, in my opinion, addressed through the job posting, and then also
Right.
people in this role often have a contract, and so the contract could have additional stipulation. So I would envision that
Mhm.
the job description probably just says other duties as defined.
right,
But-
but the job
But
posting.
anybody looking at the job posting, which is the
Correct.
second document, and I could put some phrasing to that extent and shoot this back out to the board if that's the board's wish.
In the job posting and the job description.
In the
Job
job
posting.
posting.
So, if we're not changing the job description, do we need to vote on anything tonight?
Well, may I ask,
Yeah,
may
Commissioner
I
Thompson.
ask a question? Is it unreasonable to ask that, the city manager be credentialed or a member of ICMA prior to, applying for the position of city manager?
My opinion is it's certainly not unreasonable, but I think it's also good to add the word preferred so that you don't restrict your candidate pool. You don't know who the candidates will be, and you might find someone that really ultimately appeals to the board that doesn't have that credential. So I think just saying preferred might be a good approach.
And the job posting did say that,
Mm-hmm.
so,
I said it the last time.
so I'd be willing to vote to change the job description to match what we did in the job posting 2 years ago. So we have a motion and a second, do we want to, but that's to approve what we already have, right? The job description as is from June of 2018.
That is the job description we have. What I sent the board was the job description we have and the posting that we last used.
So, do you all want to consider that motion, or do you want to, does anybody want to keep the job description as it is now? I guess that's the question, and if so, we can vote on this in this motion.
I'm fine keeping the job description as it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with
Right.
it.
I'm not fine with it.
Okay. We could, I would rather adjust it to match what we did there.
Which is, yeah, okay.
So, do you want to, we can amend the motion?
We can amend it.
Or do you want to withdraw the motion, we'll just do a new motion? How about you send that?
This is so weird.
Just read it through it,
We can withdraw it.
yeah.
It's fine.
Okay, so Commissioner Under is rescinding that motion.
Okay.
And how about a new motion?
I would make a motion that we alter the essential functions of the job description to match the key responsibilities and preferences and competencies as posted in the job posting, last job posting that we had of March 7th, 2021, so that those are congruent.
Second.
We have a second? Great. All right, we have a motion to amend the job description to match the responsibilities of the job posting 2 years ago, and we have a second. Any other discussion on this? If not, we can ask the clerk to call for a vote. Okay, Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner Unger,
Yes.
Commissioner Waldridge,
No, and I'd like to explain my vote. I just don't see why you continue to do the same thing over and over if it continues to be an issue in our city. And when the last city manager left and sort of blamed it all on the commission on why she left, I think looking at the job description to help that out, being that she did complain the whole entire time that it was overbearing of how much work she did, I think that we really need to look into that and not keep doing the same thing over and over to lead us in the same situation that could occur again. That's the point of looking at a job description and changing it. No.
Commissioner May,
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson.
Yes, and that motion carries. And thank you, Kathy. And action item number 5.
Number 5 is an amendment to Strategic Initiative Professional Services Agreement and addition of co-interim city manager duties, terms and conditions.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, any other discussion on this motion to amend the Strategic Initiatives Professional Services Agreement? All right, we have a motion and a second, and no discussion. I'll ask our clerk to call for a vote.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner Unger,
Yes.
Commissioner Waldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner May,
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson.
Yes, motion carries. Action item number 6.
Number 6 is a memorandum of agreement update, Frankfort Independent Schools, sports, baseball, softball, tennis, and golf teams.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve this MOA and second. Any discussion on this action item? If not, I'll ask our clerk to call for a vote.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner Unger,
Yes.
Commissioner Waldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner May,
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson.
Yes, and motion carries. Action item number 7,
No sponsor.
sponsored by Commissioner Waldridge.
And I do want to point out before I read this that I had a typo in the summary. When it says up to 10 years, it should read up to 10 points. I've talked to the clerk, and that's the way I'm going to read it. Okay, an ordinance amending City of Frankfort Code of Ordinances, Section 40.22 and 40.24, related to fire department age limits and promotional procedures. This ordinance amends Section 40.22 of the City of Frankfort Code of Ordinances to lower the age requirement for fire department appointments from 19 to 18, and amends Section 40.24 to redistribute the scoring percentages for fire department promotional examinations by raising the percentage assigned to a performance assessment to 45% instead of 35%, delete the component percentage assigned to longevity, and instead assign 1/2 point for each year of service up to 10 points to be added to the total score, and change the promotional ineligibility for employees that have been suspended for 3 or more days within the previous 24 months to ineligibility for any suspension within the previous 24 months.
Okay, any discussion on this first reading?
Um,
Yes. Commissioner Thompson?
Chief, this 18 is still the legal age to be able to receive your EMT.
Correct.
Your EMTB, right?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to make sure we weren't setting people up for.
No, not at all. And this also goes along with, we have some things in the works that possibly in 25 we might be able to be VOTEC school here locally as a fire science program as well, which would be a great recruitment tool and hopefully recruit locally a lot more.
Maybe have a 3rd floor to be able to do that. Sorry.
Kyle.
Sorry.
I thought you said it was too
Sorry.
expensive.
Sorry.
Too soon.
I thought you said it was too expensive. Now you're talking about 3rd floor. Which is it?
Anything else on this first reading?
Okay, great.
If not, we'll have action item number 8, another first reading, looking for a sponsor.
I'll sponsor.
And this is Commissioner May.
An ordinance amending City of Frankfort Code of Ordinances, Section 37.32, related to salary schedules and pay grade structure. This ordinance amends City of Frankfort Code of Ordinances, Section 37.32, to update City of Frankfort's salary schedule to reflect the recently adopted cost of living increase, move starting positions in several departments 1 pay band higher, and remove a reclassification structure for those positions, add new job titles and pay grades for a restructuring of the finance department, and add job titles for a risk manager and a transit driver non-CDL.
Any discussion? All right. Thanks to our city attorney there, and we'll move on to the discussion of tentative agenda for July voting session. We have we'll have second readings on fire procedures, ordinances, and the salary schedule, possibly the FEMA riverbank stabilization, the pay increase discussion for public safety and sewer and public works, paid parental leave ordinance, maybe a fire station agreement.
I would ask interim city manager Peebler if there's anything that we need to prepare for at the next meeting for discussion.
I don't have anything concrete and firm at this moment,
Okay.
but I will keep everyone posted if that changes.
Okay. The other question I will ask is, we had talked about potentially calling a special meeting.
Maybe a special meeting. We're looking at early next week. But no firm time yet. Mayor council discussion.
I would just ask if we do that, that we publicize that as much as possible so that the citizens can know that this is their meeting.
Hope we can say something tomorrow.
Great.
All right, and any unfinished business from last meeting? If none, any new business? Commissioner Unger?
I mentioned the Fuller Center of Housing is doing that event on July 22nd, and Magistrate Dykes reached out to ask if we had dumpsters, which we don't have, but I was wondering if we could donate 10 cans or some cans to the property on Owington Avenue that they're going to work on. I don't know if that's something there's board support we could do.
I was helping Sean right here. What was the question?
To donate cans for the Fuller Center of Housing group to clean up the Owington Avenue property they're going to be at.
I can. That's something I can get with. I can get with the Marcy.
And I could email
Okay.
info if that's needed.
Commissioner Thomas?
I was inundated with a number of questions over the last couple of days about the overgrowth of west side entrance to the city of Frankfort. I know that Ms. Peebler, Chief Monroe, and others have been working with District 5 and Public Works to determine what can and can't be done. I think it's imperative that we do what we can to make sure that if it needs to be a city-county deal, or if the county doesn't want, we got to do something about that. That is potentially going to be a very well-traveled area into the town. It's going to be very much seen, and we need to look as good as every other community that's our size and larger throughout the Commonwealth. And we're the capital. We need to have a little bit of pride of what this looks like, and I give props to all the people that take all the pictures and do all those things, but it goes not only for the entrance but also the medians that I know may not be city requirements, but it's in our city, and we got to make sure that those things look good. So I would hope that we at least have a discussion on that, and maybe maybe have an update and discuss with Public Works at that point.
I'll have an update for you.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Waters?
So in regards to the side that Fazoli's and all of that sit on, so that would be state property. And when I spoke with them and had a meeting with them, they said that they are only scheduled to mow that entire area twice a year, and they don't foresee them adding any more just because of the overbrush of everywhere else. But that's what they said. That was their contract. And then they also stated that they're not required to clean off the vegetation on the wall, because actually the wall is actually owned by each facility. Like Fazoli's owns the spot behind them, Chili's owns their spot, and so they are not the ones to clean off the vegetation as well. That each individual company would be responsible to do that. And as I was calling people, they could actually care less that there's grass on this.
Yeah.
So that's the information I gathered from following all of the dots to try to figure out how we can do that, because I would like a mural on that wall eventually, possibly coming into Frankfort, would be something that I've sort of thrown out there and talking with the state and with some of those business owners. My second item is just the fireworks. I know we have an ordinance, and I know they're still going off, and I just ask that everyone please be respectful. We do not have enough police in this town to come and take every call on fireworks. We're all bothered, even outside my home, we're all bothered by this. You know, but just please, those that want to do fireworks, please end them at a decent time. There's dogs, there's animals, there's people that are sleeping, kids and everything, and people are just really upset about that. So let's try to
My German
be a little bit
Shepherd
more
agrees.
respected. Okay.
He's done with it.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you could, that would be great. So therefore, we're not, you know, trying to move fireworks out of our community right after 4th of July. So there's no more selling in Franklin County to maybe help alleviate some of this could be something that we look into if it continues. And also being aware that there are only certain allowed fireworks inside our city limits as to the things that blow up could land in someone's house or on someone's roof to start a fire. So please be conducive of that, because I had some things fall in my yard from fireworks that almost hit me when I was walking in my yard to my house. So just be cognizant of that. My last thing, Mayor, is that I would just like, I've been doing a study over the past few months of our bus stops. There's a few bus stops that have been used from our homelessness and for families setting up shop and eating and doing picnics under to keep the kids and stuff out of the sun. And I just suggest that some of these are near businesses and the business owners are upset about it. They're leaving trash behind. So if we could sort of see how we can move, you know, the loitering of people, like if you're waiting on the bus, great, but it's not a place to really gather and to leave trash. I don't know if we need to put trash cans by them, but I've had a couple of businesses complain, and I've been trying to follow up on my own to see what it looks like. I've taken several pictures, and the last was just literally last week, and there was, I guess, a homeless family that was picnicking underneath of one of them and maybe leaving trash after that's all said and done. So maybe we can help families transition or find them a safe space to gather out of the heat rather than underneath of our bus stops and in front of businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Roberts. Any other new business? If not, we'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Mayor, we will go to executive session pursuant to KRS 61.810, property deliberations on the future acquisition of real property related to the implementation of the downtown master plan, when publicity would be likely to affect the value, and KRS 61.8101F, personnel, discussion of an employee's problem resolution complaint. Action may be taken in open session.
Second.
All right, all those in, okay, motion to go into executive session. All those in favor? Say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. All right, we're now in executive session. open session.
No action had been taken.
Well, there,
The motion. There is action.
Well, there is a motion, but we didn't take any action in closed session.
we didn't take any action in closed session. That's correct. We did not take any action in closed session.
Mayor, I would move at this time with regard to the personnel action discussed previously. I would move to deny the request for a hearing to be held as it would be unnecessary, and to direct the office of the interim city managers to make the necessary adjustments to address the remediation of the employee's grievance in accordance with Frankfort City Ordinance Section 37.42 that allows for exceptions to the provisions.
Second.
You have to give me that.
All right, motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this motion? Seeing none and hearing none, I'll ask our city clerk to call for a vote.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Unger?
Yes.
Commissioner Waldridge?
Yes.
Commissioner May?
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson?
Yes. Motion carries.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for the city to purchase property, 2.41 acres of property at 772 Wilkerson Boulevard, and ask that the mayor be able to sign all documents moving forward.
Second.
Motion, Commissioner Walters, second, Commissioner Thompson. Any discussion on this?
Call the question.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Unger?
Yes.
Commissioner Waldridge?
Yes.
Commissioner May?
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson?
Yes, and that motion carries.
Can I have one more thing? Not that it has anything to do with that. I just want us to get an update on Interwrap, because we've been talking about it and want to know where we are with that and when this is all going to start, because I have people calling and asking questions because we thought it was this summer. So if we could get an Interwrap update at the next meeting, it would be great.
We'll go to the next meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.